Welcome to the Bluestocking Circle podcast, Lady Nerds on Popular Culture. We're your hosts, Gricel,
Ashley,
and B.
And this is Minisode 10.5, Feedback, Favorites, and First Impressions.
After being just raked over the coals for my lack of Batman knowledge, I did not watch any of the Burton movies, but I did watch Lego Batman.
So you did your homework?
I did my homework, and it was really cute. I have to give it to you guys. It was adorable. I laughed, I cried, and I'm talking like ugly cried.
How do you cry over Lego Batman?
I had to ask this too.
At the end, when he realized he
I'm
had
the crier.
No.
And I'm like, what made you cry?
No, at the end, when he realized he had a family, and he's like, I work alone, and he sends them all away, and Alfred's like, but what? And they're all like in the little ship thing, and they're like, let me out. And he's like, no. And he's trying to help them, and like, he works better together. And even at the very beginning, I didn't cry with the Joker, but when Batman is telling the Joker, we're nothing serious, and then I don't know how they gave Joker like a really sad face, but he just looks so sad.
It's probably the only worthwhile Joker.
I got very emotional watching Lego Batman. I'm not gonna lie, from beginning to end. But it was entertaining. I would watch it again. So I'm gonna watch the Lego movie because I know Batman shows up, and that was fun. So I will say, did my homework, and you guys were right. Lego Batman was a good movie.
I can promise you that everything is awesome.
Everything is awesome.
And now I understand what that means. I get things
Everything
now.
is good.
I get things now.
Well, I'm very glad that you followed up on your homework. Excellent job, student Ashley.
A+ for me.
I also have a follow-up. After a fun foray into the Gotham by Gaslight Elseworld, I was encouraged to seek out a collection of Superman-based Elseworld stories that I had never read before, collected in a volume creatively called Elseworlds Superman Volume 1.
Now, is this like a Spaceballs or a, the History of the World Part 1? Is there a Volume 2?
I don't know. I wasn't encouraged to seek it out because these were not good. The quality varied greatly, to put it politely. But worse, most of the stories were infuriating in the way they treated Lois. Everything from attempted rape to her murder over and over and over again with little to none of her personality present. However, as I said, a couple of them were worth reading, including one titled Speeding Bullets, which was based on the premise of what if Superman was found by the Waynes as a baby instead of by the Kents and grew up to be Batman instead. I liked it enough to recommend it to you, Gricel. Did you end up reading it?
I am currently in the middle of this collection. However, based on your feedback, I'm not sure I'm going to continue. There was one story, which is the one that I'm in the middle of right now, that kind of reminds me of I Am Legend. It's a post-apocalyptic world where Superman thinks he's the only survivor, and that's part of the story is him discovering that there are other superheroes who survived this thing. I am only up to the part where they are forming a new world, so I don't know where this goes. Speeding Bullets was interesting. I, too, could, however, have done without the rape threat. And then there was a really awful Arthurian legend one that started strong. I was impressed by the dialect and the dialogue. That sounds like a riddle. But it started well. I had high hopes. And then it took a very dark turn, and that was not good. It involved the murder and the rape and the murder that we just discussed. Not good at all.
How do you mess up an Arthurian Superman story that badly?
It was bad. We do not recommend the Elseworld Superman.
The one you're reading right now has not one, but 2 cases of fridging. I give it a -5 socks, and I encourage you to not finish that story.
Probably won't.
Speaking of fridging, I don't know if you guys have seen Deadpool 2 yet?
Not yet.
Just because we had just been talking about fridging in our last episode, you're talking about it again. I actually love the movie. I thought it was really funny. Of course, it's raunchy and ridiculous and just all kinds of, you don't want to watch it with anyone who is a generation above you. So don't watch it with your parents, your grandparents. Don't watch it with like your kids or nieces and nephews. This is strictly your generation only you can watch this with. But given that, the whole point of the story is that Wade is pushed to action because Vanessa is killed. And that's not a spoiler. That's
the beginning.
That's the beginning of it. Yeah. It drove me up the wall. Like we were just talking about fridging, and you have a whole superhero movie about it. The movie plays with ideas of family and, leaving a legacy and all that stuff. And I kind of feel like there are a million other ways that you could explore that, especially with someone who is a mercenary / assassin / orphan / has no family, has had no family figure ever growing up. There are a million ways that you could explore the dynamics of family and what it means to be a father, to be a child, to be a whatever, without fridging his love interest. It just really irritated me. So I wondering if you guys had seen it, because I was wondering if it was something where it was just me, or maybe because we had literally finished filming the last episode. I went home, went to watch it, and it came out, and I was like, seriously? More of this nonsense?
I remember watching Deadpool 1. It's been a while since I've seen it. I thought and again, my Marvel is not as well versed as my DC stuff. Isn't she supposed to become a superhero in the comics?
I know nothing.
I thought that was going in a different direction, at least based on
from
the little bit I know.
From what I understand, I've never read the comics. From what I understand, yes, she ends up being a superhero. They might be taking a different direction, which is fine. You're allowed to do that in adaptation, but then why do you have to go so differently as to kill her?
I haven't seen it, but I was reading the interviews with the writers, and they said they had never heard of fridging. How is that possible?
What?
How do you work in comics and not know about fridging?
That's literally, we discussed it, literally where the term came from was
And Gail Simone has written for Deadpool.
Yes, she has. This is true.
Also, I guess that was another follow-up that I had to a conversation where if you watch Deadpool 2, it's a good movie, but just realize that you will have that little bit of, feminist irritation. Or, no, let's put it politely, feminist rage at the beginning.
We're good for rage. So, I had another follow-up to my own personal thoughts. And as I was thinking more and more about our discussion involving the Darcy-esque or not Darcy-esqueness of Bruce Wayne, I came to a realization. So I had mentioned that there were some differences, or at least I had hinted at some differences between Victorian and romantic heroes when looking at Bruce Wayne as a character. We decided, or I was very, very emphatically shut down on the Darcy and told that he was a Rochester, which I will accept. I will accept the Rochester. But then I started thinking about Rochester, and I was like, well, he doesn't quite match up with the Rochester either. And it came to me, Rhett and Scarlet. Bruce and Selina as Rhett and Scarlet, because they are both equally toxic in certain renditions, but they just keep coming back for each other, and they are my most problematic fave. So I am going to say it, and that is my most recent conclusion on that debate.
I can see it.
I have no problem with this because I hate Rhett and Scarlet and Gone with the Wind with a passion, so fine. Since I have no feelings about Bruce and Selina, they can be Rhett and Scarlet. I'm okay.
I'm okay with this conclusion. No Heathcliff. Now, if you're wondering what I am really trying to describe by the difference between a Regency and a Victorian hero, a Regency hero is technically a romantic hero. Now, a Victorian hero is an ultra-romantic hero. The Regency heroes tend to be very Byronic, inspired by the actual Byron of his time, and it's more of a focus on fitting into society, passion, the dealing with social changes, class changes of the Romantic era. That is, again, the romantic in the sense of the literary era. The Victorian hero is a actual romantic hero. Hear me out. So the idea of the romantic hero goes a little bit beyond the hero known as like the Romance era literary hero. It's confusing, but think of the Victorian hero as the Byronic hero on steroids. So he is a little bit more extreme than before. So rather than fitting into society, he tends to be trying to survive society. He's a little bit more on the outskirts. So think your Darcy versus your Rochester. Or your Heathcliff, they're more so than trying to just find their place within society or the niceties of society. They're more generally the slightly darker, more gothic outsider, or even if you look at something like Bleak House or any of your Charles Dickens, like they're always trying to survive the Victorian era, because the Victorian era was pretty darn harsh. So they are more in control. They're dealing with more moral and technological changes of the age. So when I think of a Bruce Wayne character, and then I started to second guess myself as far as his personality as a Darcy, it's like, well, take that Darcy, but add more. And you've got your Victorian hero.
Only you would turn a Batman comic.
I'm a literature major, of course. I have an advanced degree in literature. This is what lit degrees are made for. So for today's favorite segment, we're going to focus on our favorite comics, superheroes, and otherwise. To get us started, I will mention once again, I'm pretty sure you're all tired of hearing me mention this, but Saga. It is a quintessential choice in my literary canon of comics and manga and all these things. You must read Saga, pretty much. Other favorites include the Hush books, both Hush and Heart of Hush, which is a Batman series. Tom King's Batman, obviously, because I have not stopped talking about this. But my favorite arcs are I Am Suicide and The Rules of Engagement. And Mr. Miracle, also by Tom King, because Big Barda is the female icon I did not know I needed. And it's a very compelling superhero story that involves PTSD. The awful injustice, we shall end it there. And just as a side note, because I wanted to give a shout out to manga as another visual art form, Fruits Basket, Marupuri, and Cheese Sweet Home, which is about a little kitty that gets found. And it's adorable. And it's also really cute for all ages.
Oh, kitty. Okay, well, obviously going to add the kitty one to my list of comics to read. I don't read quite as many comics as I think you guys do, but I have a couple. I know I've mentioned Monstrous before by Marjorie Liu. Monstrous is amazing. The writing is great. The art is beautiful. The artist and the writer are both female. The story is really interesting. It's set in a weird kind of like fantasy / sci-fi / you're not sure if it's the end of the world or just the history of a very, very different world than ours, with magic and animals. And one of the things I like about it is that the villains are not one-dimensional. Everyone has a reason for why they're doing what they're doing. So yes, they're villains given the point of view of the protagonist, but you could make an argument that they're not really if you switch the story and look at it from their point of view. This is one of my pre-order books. And the other book that I have always pre-ordered is Lazarus by Greg Rucka. I seem to just really like dystopian science fiction and or fantasy comics with damaged but strong female leads. That tends to be my thing. This is another one. This is a dystopia. It takes place in what used to be the United States, has been divided up into different fiefdoms. And each fiefdom has a different style of governance and how to deal with the population because resources are finite, so they have to figure out who gets what. And then everyone has a Lazarus, which is this superhuman, I guess maybe almost a superhero now that I'm talking about it, in the context of our summer of superheroes. A superhero like warrior / emissary / face of that fiefdom. In Lazarus, the protagonist that you follow, you realize you think you're following her, but you may not be because there's also really interesting ideas of immortality and what it means to be human. So it's really, really good. Highly recommended.
Interesting.
As I mentioned in episode 3, my all-time favorite comic series is Fables by Will Willingham, which is definitely not without its issues, pun intended, but it's what got me into comics in the first place. Since I discussed it in the Reading Rec segment of that episode, I won't go into detail now. But if you like fairy tale fantasy, I recommend it, and you can hear more about it in that episode 3 segment. My favorite current series is The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl by Ryan North and Erica Henderson. I was a DC girl growing up, as we've discussed, but as I mentioned in our Superman episode, I hated the New 52 so much that I went over to Marvel for the first time. And there, I discovered this gem. It's about the adorable Doreen Green, a college student majoring in computer science, who as the eponymous superhero eats nuts and kicks butts, while navigating the usual young adult issues. The series is really funny, and it has great science fiction storylines and clever storytelling devices, such as Twitter-based recaps between the Marvel superheroes. In addition, it features an excellent friendship between a diverse cast of characters, as well as a squirrel wearing a pink bow named Tippy-Toe. And I just realized, I said in the last episode that I had never read any Iron Man comics, but he shows up in the Squirrel Girl series, so I sit corrected. Tony Stark is quite charming in the comics too, at least in this series, and I reiterate that Bruce Wayne could stand to take a page from his book.
Are you excited for the series that they're making?
Very excited.
I just learned about it like 2 days ago, so when you said it, I was like, oh my god, perfect tie-in.
I'm not excited that she's sharing. Squirrel Girl should have her own movie franchise.
Baby steps. We'll start with the series and we see what we can do.
The next episode in the Bluestocking Circle's Summer of Superheroes will be on The Incredibles. We will cover both the 2004 Pixar film and its 2018 sequel, which is being released in the United States the day we're releasing this minisode, June 15th, 2018. Since we want to have the episode ready as soon as possible after the sequel premieres, Ashley and I switched spots for those of you keeping track. When I proposed this episode, I said to Ashley and Gricel that I thought it was okay we didn't have a newbie for this movie since we would all be newbies for the sequel, to which Gricel replied that she had never seen The Incredibles.
This is true.
So Gricel, since you are incredibly an Incredibles newbie after all, what are your first impressions of this movie?
All I know is that it is about a family of superheroes set in the same universe as all the other Pixar movies. It's a fact. It's been proven. And there's a snarky lady with a bob, and that is it.
There are so many excellent quotes that you can live your life by. How have you not seen it?
Do you know about the no capes?
Nope.
No capes.
No.
That is just like fashion and costuming choice 101. When you wake up in the morning, you decide, what am I going to wear today? You have to remember what Edna said. She said, no capes.
I see.
I don't think you're really understanding how much you've been missing out. It's got a feminist story because there's a lot of interesting gender dynamics. It's got heart. It's adorable. It's so good.
It will make you cry.
It will make you cry. Oh, yeah, it makes me cry, and you're the crier, as we said in the group.
I am the crier.
Gricel, cover your ears for a moment. Ashley, I want to know, what are your thoughts on the upcoming sequel?
I'm really, really excited. I know you're the opposite of me in terms of how much information you want going into a movie. I've seen as many trailers and sneak peeks and teasers and like 10-second spots on Instagram as I've been able to. Everything looks awesome. I really like what I think they're going to do with the continuation of family dynamics. I think it's something that doesn't get explored as much as it could in modern culture. And, you know, like more Honey. She's my favorite character in the first movie, and she might be my favorite superhero ever. Gricel won't understand this line because she hasn't seen The Incredibles, but in the best scene of cinema, bar none, you hear this voice. And the voice says, "The greater good, I am your wife. I am the greatest good you are ever gonna get." And that's all you need in life, is Honey telling you this.
Those are some really strong words there.
So good.
This promises to be a fun episode. Ashley and I are both super excited to see the sequel, and I hope you are too. I think you're going to love this movie, Gricel.
I think it'll be fun just to hear what your experiences are and to have you both bash me for not having seen this.
So gather all your leftovers and have your automated captain pour you another mimosa. Then join us for episode 11, The Incredibles, which will be released on July 1st. In the meantime, visit our website at thebluestockingcircle.com for the show notes. Find us on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, Pinterest, and pretty much everywhere at Blue Sock Circle. That's Blue, S-O-X, Circle. Email us at thebluestockingcircle@gmail.com and join the conversation. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, so please rate, review, and subscribe to help us grow.
Cheers! Let's start with feedback that we did not get, so let's come up with our own.